Religion of the Sea. A Religion for the Subconscious Mind. Written by Safwan Arekat. Narrated by Hawkins. Author's Note: This is not a Bible for a new religion. This is not a book on science. It is not philosophy, nor is it literature. This is not even a book. It is synchronicity at work, a testament to knowledge. Star of the East. Lend me your ears and listen to me. I have a tale to share with you. A tale of hope, a tale of grief, of despair and true belief. So come on now, set your mind, and a path to glory we shall find. But best it is to let your heart the road to heaven to create. In the stormy winds of a raging sea, with chilling waves drenching me, in the pitch darkness of a starless night, the eyes deprived of a flicker of light, on a battered ship with a sailless mast, swaying and swerving, no anchor to cast, no radio, compass, nor a maritime map, in the middle of nowhere, squarely trapped, and the water of life not in store, not a shrieking bird from a nearby shore. Resigned to a fate that was short of luck, I collapsed helpless on the wooden deck. I recalled the events that transpired. Vaguely, though, my mind was tired. Events leading me to this end. A predicament I couldn't mend. No matter how strong or focused a will is charged to spark a soul turned dull. It did not matter to rationalize chaining events or their cause, or improper action undertaken with malice absent but ignorance laden. Yet I was never given to sing songs to yesterday's fears, insecurities, or wrongs. The matter of fact really was, I was clasped in heavy chains, and in a rigid and cold reality, I was in excruciating pain. I often passed beyond fears in times past, but the shackles of flesh that would forever last, I couldn't even imagine how my soul could flow past. I searched for balance within the self. In its every recess, I sought relief. They say that the rock steadfast is the trust in one's self innermost. But what I saw was a mangled mess. My problem, like a bomb, exploded, obliterating my ego's sense. Everything I had known and felt was fake, and much in my past life a waste, I could not believe what I was just learning. Is this me? How possibly could I have not known? Me, the smart, bright kid at school? Me, the soft-spoken, warm-hearted, now a fool? I wallowed in self-pity and lament. I regretted and I wept. Well, where had my kin been? Had they no zeal? They were near, their hearts tearing for my ordeal. Third in line, and half a dozen. In a close-knit family, I had risen. Speaking of family, there isn't much to say, except they hadn't failed me on any day. Always reliable and protecting. On them, I was always depending. So when the fateful calamity on me befell, like the war general that he was, my father rose for battle. And like troopers, my brothers vigilantly flanked me. But how could an army of men engage a fate that God ordained in his infinite wisdom but through my pains? The smoke at Kurukshetra, ghostly thinning, there was a great divide, as if Moses' staff had done its magic to leave me stranded on the doomed side. I was cut off and all alone. I could see my brothers, but they couldn't see me. For with ghosts, I was to relate, without suffering the mortal fate, except in spirit, that had to cease, and all I could hope for was to rest in peace. My spirit was dead, but my soul, the stubborn, wouldn't let go of the cool breath of winter. A great mystery of nature is the placid core of a twister, a place where emotion could be static, even though reasoning may still be dynamic. There, in the docile eye of the hurricane, I would conjure up only pictures of my pain to allow me to recollect, recompose, and explain. The rational mind is a funny thing, really. It may integrate or differentiate. It may contrast or relate. It may assimilate or separate. A myriad of abstractions to numerate. Of a cause and its effect. It may investigate. On a cosmological epic of creation, it may speculate and elaborate. Or a grandiose portrait of life and consciousness. It may splendidly paint. But into the reality of a tiny mustard seed, it cannot penetrate. Take it from me, being versed in the illogic of the quantum. See, rational thought is fatally undermined by the fallibility of its prime tenet of objectivity. Nevertheless, out of distress, misery, and desperation, I committed my psyche to my own evaluation, diagnosing myself to be clinically depressed. So, fluoxetine, I self-prescribed. But that lasted a mere fortnight due to an allergic reaction of some sort, with bloodshot eyes and a metallic mouth. Worst of all, it felt as if I had no soul. Glory! I hear the azan. Glory! Comes Ramadan. I always liked the month of Ramadan, fasting, praying, and reciting the Quran. You see, the beauty of Ramadan is its departure from the mundane. Isn't it cool to rebel against routine, society itself being the rebel? Anyway, I trusted in tradition. Why not? Of options to choose from, I hadn't a lot. So in Ramadan, I contemplated the religious connotations in what had happened as a karmic retribution to a blasphemous sin from which I was in dire need of absolution. But what sin? The sacred books where I often dwelled turned up empty this time around. Or more politely, let me put it, of their fruits, I wasn't a recipient. Neither Bible, Gita, nor Dhammapada provided sealer for my veins. And of their sidestepping, I was not repentant, as I imagined them extolling the spoils of a tyrant. And don't get me wrong, in a merciful God I did trust, but it was my God to find I must. Born to roam, an impetuous breed, I was always drawn by an inner need for a mystical exposition to finally lead to resolving the enigma of my life and deed. As to anyone's objections, I didn't heed, but I believed they all had their creed, no matter how their minds they read, or what their souls they choose to feed. Well, faced by perdition, that was the time, if ever. With the mind, I sought the sacred wisdom, whose forbidden fruit I had coveted often, but now for sanity's sake and redemption from macabre gore infernal to relief and bliss eternal. I besought the souls of Sufi saints in old and yellowish secret journals, the treasures among the thought annals. Yet, what in the mind echoed resonant from the heart remained absent, and the soul still vacant. I should have known better. I had never enrolled in a spiritual college, since the diploma held by the saint professor was solely his own to bask in blissful pleasure and to share it with him. There could be no partner. See, I knew it deep in my heart that beyond the suffering upon which the senses pride, there was only absolute void, except, of course, for that knowledge itself deep in my heart, of which no senses may hope to find. But the senses themselves are blind, if it wasn't for the light that emanates from deep inside. Alas, the saints' oneness remained elusive, their own experience to be exclusive. Thus, all options were exhausted, and all doors were securely bolted in a maze of paths intertwining. I was left in place, idly standing, with all rivers having dried up, and not a sip from the holy cup. Eventually, I stopped believing in magic, and surely that was the most tragic. Have you known true despair, all hope lost, and faith so rare? Have you suffered inner treason, abandoned by your sense of reason? Have you ever been let down by the beloved soul your own? Have you ever painted a picture bleak of an empty life, no future to seek? Have you been caught in a pit of lit tar, motion barred, but senses afire? Have you ever of blood shed tears for a lost heart's child so dear? Have you ever felt like a desert leper, exiled, abandoned, in misery, fettered? I pleaded hopelessly to my tormentor. Loneliness, loneliness, my soul bound. How I long for another soul found to lift me up high off the ground, and together we'd roam a heavenly round. Loneliness, loneliness, my soul bound. Can't I hear another soul sound? My cheek pressed hard against the wet wood deck as fate loomed near to seal my trek. On salty brine, my throat would choke the minute the fragile ship's hull broke. Have you ever taken a timely action without ever knowing its origin? Never in a million years will I know why. At that moment I raised my head, parted my eyelids, or looked in that direction. But there, on the horizon, my eyes were nestled on a sign in heaven, a divine vision, a gem luminescent, the purest crescent, a diamond chiseled, a most perfect bezel. In a heavenly jewel, the eyes had reveled. Yet my eyes at it were quiescent. It was the soul's lens focused, vivid. Never had I felt such comfort. I was gazing at a shining spirit. A star in the east was clearly present. Seeing it, I prayed. Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might, to have my wish come true tonight. And with that, my wish came true, for that shining spirit was none other than Pujapat, the magnificent. I wondered, what odd chance charts Pujapat proximate in the arduous trek of my soul celestial? What rare flare ignites my senses ablaze in that smoldering forge of her astral form? What virgin mercy shines my inner slate stainless by the insistent intercession of her angelic virtue? What empowered force roots Pujapat bound inextricable and forever deeper into the core of my being, penetrating? Yet, what soft whispers of thought paint Pujapat among distant stars loftily translucent? But there was no answer which any tongue could utter, and no reply in the breeze of thought any mind would flutter. Yet the tale may be told, and it is a tale of magic, a tale of wondrous happenings, of chances that come one after another, repeating like the waves of the ocean, repeating like day following night, and summer following winter. Reliable. The faith in them is unbound and growing stronger by every flower blooming in spring and every leaf falling in autumn. The sea Pacific in a steady breeze, and clouds evanescent in flowing ease. 1,000 stars brightly shone, brightest of them was my stone. Not to the north, but duly east. My pole star signaled me to meet. The deck dried out, and the sail filled up, and the ship's bow cut the crystal sheet. Now, dawn in the east closer zooms, as my gem in the sky heavenly blooms. In the rising sun, my star will fade by the face of soul to be replaced. But until then, I'll promenade along my journey heavenly bound, to merge with spirits in heaven round. With earnest hope I do beseech for you to join with me and reach for your soul's delight, your guiding light, on my ship afloat, my magic boat, and to come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. Temptations. Sex, drugs, wine, and song. Among temptations, they belong. But true temptations are those devised by the devil of reason in thoughts divide. Live like a saint, if so you like. Are you sure it's heaven you hike? Live in a brothel with heart awake. Yours is a share of paradise, no mistake. You have seen what I went through before my glimpse of Eden's view. It would seem my star of dreams does not flow in senses streams. What my eyes see in much of awe is a carnal building lacking flaw, of lovely shape and healthy glow. obeying strictly nature's law. So what's so strange in what I see that hides a secret away from me? At beauty, my eye sparkly gleams. At a face with a trace of lucky genes, with a lovely shape and a catchy scene, when of vital health she proudly beams. We all know of beauty's throw, caught by eyes of skillful claw, in its adoration they all plow, reaping sensually what they grow. It is true that this attraction arises in a ghostly fashion in the field of thought as fleeting passion. Yet every thought born in the mind is of biological origin, you will find, due to a reaction of a chemical kind, strictly bound in the physical bind. To believe me, just extrapolate the next time you hallucinate under the sinful spell of the mushroom omelet. Of perception, I've merely proposed rational ideas on my mind imposed by experimental evidence written in prose, dutifully by scientists with highest hopes, the mysteries of nature to expose. In skillful theories they espouse. The scientists concede in humble defeat to the relative nature of theoretical feats, in never realizing that absolute. In theories they can't constitute. Nevertheless, they set up theories to break the ground, a street below the mind's child's feet, in a wilderness which with bounty abounds. Yet some physicists have great delusions for the mind of God to find solutions, when they're better off to hibernate, or their ALS ailment to meditate, as to how the 5 sense gateways work, how light as photon parcels in the dark shower the retina, igniting the optic nerve in sparks that coalesce in the mind as frightful images of sharks, or how the vibes of a violin string on air molecules they impinge, one after the other cascading to the ear to hear a violin sing, or how the hand in the water stream is tickled holding the water bream. These sensations are well explained by theories in the relative plane, but not the dose in Dillman's rose. The dose of opium to my nose. But why don't I take you to task to view the questions that scientists ask when they approach nature to unveil its mask and explain a phenomenon where the senses bask? Harlots of thought are a voluptuous 7. The where in space to locate Eden, the when in time arrives heaven. The why is bliss away amiss, the who is lucky to collect, the which to dissect, the how of it all, the what is it? In thought's brothel, they do provide, side by side, they shamelessly parade, and the lusty minds they will invade, not failing to explain and persuade, and a single whole they will attack with daggers of reason to protect the frightened mind to feel secure, and of longevity to be assured. Yet, even the oneness of the Sufi saints is a birth in the world of words and count, a concept to point an arrow and indicate the hierarchical order of cause and effect. But not the world of pure honey sweet, in whose description thoughts deplete, and mouths are poured in hard concrete. Where on earth is the Holy Grail? Will a sip from a cup stop a whale? Where is a question of coordinates, of places and spaces? It speculates. We all live in 3 dimensions, as judged by our 3 peripheral senses, hearing, touching, and our vision's lenses. We have an intuitive feel for what is meant when lengths and distances are mentioned. They tell us of how far or close an object is, and how long or short an interval measures, and how in structured arrays form lines, volumes, and areas. These feelings we never think of, we just apply them to get by with. Yet, we do not normally tend to realize that our measurements are of relative size, and of an absolute reference we fantasize. My height of 6'2" in itself is absolutely meaningless, if not compared with whoever's or the stick giving these numbers. You see now why the word meter has no meaning within its letters, and not a merit to the leader, if not to gauge the Neaster. But do you see how the vast journey to Altair is a short stroll to your next door neighbor, if not for the relativity in thought's affair, resurrected in the mind by asking where? When? When is a more subtle question, it may seem. She drowns in the senses' turbulent stream. When covets the promise of a future event, or the knowledge of a long ago dead past, both being from our senses, this moment absent. But thoughts can't grasp this moment's present. as the above line in the rhyme is already in a casket. So, when does Father Time spend his leisurely moments? There's still that elusive sensation of the inner clock. It is an illusion resulting from the were flock, which is the incessant motion of the stock, never arriving at a port stock. The stock is moving objects that are nothing but thoughts, in neurons that arc and spark. Einstein knew of this questions game, so he invented the famous space-time, where both are treated as the same. Accordingly, time is the lead singer in a quartet band, singing songs but never alone on the music stand. Senses being an audience with clapping hands, seeing objects in the rhythm twirl and dance. The illusion of time is shattered for the parted twin, boarding a spacecraft in the relativistic thought plane. Now you know that when is aware. One is a harlot, the other is a whore. If you've been attentive to my tongue's strife, would you still ask yourself, when will my next check arrive? Now, the musical stage has been set by thought, so thought may dance in it. Why? Why is the heart and soul of reason? She asks, why is the killer rotting in prison? Did he not know that the law of the land is an eye for an eye and a hand for a hand? That's what we were told by Sir Isaac Newton. But physicists are now in a dazing maze. They have glimpsed the quantum craze. Does a single thing behave in opposing ways? Are electrons particles, or are they waves? Is Schrodinger's cat alive, or is it in the grave? But what complicates the situation more towards mystery strange is not following the electron steps on the dancing stage, not knowing when it jumps or where it plays or why it sways in that twisted way. Well, what are these orderly objects we see in the fair? Unlike electrons, they do not disappear into thin air, only to reappear instantaneously, God knows where. They are a huge parade of dancing individuals. Each is freely dancing within a small circle, but all together we see a carnival in an order which is statistical. Remember that the carnival tunes are composed by the whore twins. So, in cause and effect, do you still believe in? Right, yet wrong, Dr. Einstein. It is us, not God, with dice we play, and open a worm can by asking why. Who is writing these strange words? Oh, whose thoughts are being read? Oh, whom is offended? Oh, who pretends to comprehend? Oh, who is whom the nasty witch grooms? So, who is the witch? And who is whom? Oh, who single-handedly distributes raw quality among a divided perception of a single reality, and to different, illusory entities established in identity? Oh, who is the sexiest of the seven and the ultimate temptress? Oh, who instills greed and conceit in those who do possess? Oh, who sprouts envy and jealousy in those who miss? Oh, who is reincarnated in the mind as whose? Therefore, creating the economic mess. Oh, who identifies subjects from objects and distributes actions to causes and effects, thus cradles the why and perpetuates her defects. Oh, who identifies the pair of opposites in the divided whole, which is the source of relativity, thus nourishes the twin whore? Oh, read as a period after you read as a mark. You'll get your answers, but you're left in the dark. Is it all too difficult to convince you that whom is only who, and who is only you? Who herself is your illusory self when you say, who am I? Abandon this question, and the circular answer vanishes. Which is the witch, that nasty bitch? If I ever catch, I'll bury in a ditch. Which is a sharp diamond blade in the hands of an epileptic child? Will he not cut himself and bleed? Which is the source of all evil? It is the twin horn of the devil. Against it you cannot rebel. Which divides and conquers the mind into seeing halves and quarters, where in truth, reality in only one indivisible quarters? Which is duality in the pairs of opposites, good and evil, negatives and positives in elementary concepts or composites? Which is the origin of relativity, that distorted view of reality and a life of suffering quality? Which is the source for counting above unity and accounting for misery and quantity? Which is confusion in choices, but not as free will passes to times and places? If I see a witch, I'll whip with a switch. Oh, how I wish there was no witch. How? How? She's the madam. The tricks she knows all. In trouble she won't let any of her ladies fall. How? Is a grand unifier, but of a deluded kind, She reassembles from chaos a ruthless mafia gang by organizing and supervising with a sleight of hand. In the crime of deception, she's the godmother in the land. By asking, how? All the horrors quickly array in a line, flaunting in front of the sense customers and the lusty minds, offering their services freely, it may seem, of varied kinds, and introducing themselves and exhibiting their talents to win the man. I am witch, and if you choose me, you'll get it a lot. Not just once, because I can divide and I can cut. I am who? The dreamy-eyed. Look into my eyes and you'll find yourself, and me you'll buy. I am why? A sip of my wine will get you off to the highest high. I am when in my arms you'll find eternal heaven. I am where, and you can kiss me anywhere. Straight into your eyes looks the madam. Who strikes your fancy? Why do you like her? Which will you choose? When and where will you please? But to what she invites you for, don't give in. They are all evil suggestions, and sin in sin, and if you give in to her, your soul will never win. What? But where is the debutante, the one they call what? Isn't she among the lot? There she is, standing there in the dark corner. It's her first time in the thought jungle among monsters. But customers are lusting after her the most. With anything they'll barter. Why doesn't she join this sensuous lineup? Is she somebody's daughter? She is a virgin, you must know. Her mannerism in that will clearly show. She is being forcibly dragged into standing in the row among the harlots and the whores. But she is a sweet rose. She has no talent of her own. She cannot entertain. But, like the others, she is a question, isn't she? If she ever matures, she could be a who? If you ask, what is her name? A when? If you ask, what time will she arrive? A where? If you ask, what place will she come from? A how? If you ask, what circumstance will bring her into my fold? A why? If you ask, what reason brings her nearby in the journey of my life? A which? If you ask, what? She cannot grow up to be a witch. What is beyond division? She is essence itself. The essence of identity, time, place, process, and reason. What is the virgin spirit of Pujapat? The Rose of Dilmun. The essence of wisdom and beauty. Never fear the birth of thought. Judge me not, a boorish brat. Majnun Layla, I am not. a gypsy's bell ringer, think me not. But the dearest that my heart enfolds is Dilmun's rose in legends of old. Like Dante's Beatrice, you I mold. Of Rumi's shams and glittering gold, and of Sophia's wisdom to be found in Nizam of Arabi's treasure mound. But I can't cast my puja pot in an idle mold. Can't I expound? Can tongues refine the zest of wine? Can hands scribe rhyme a velvet touch? Could ears decipher a cloaked recital of sacred Bible? Could eyes ever sight that inner light? Alas, I am but a nose, lapsed drunken in the scent of a rose. Bewitched. I hear you knocking at my door, for your soul's sore to find a cure. But before you fly high and soar, and at heaven's goal to make a score, you must resist the witch's lustful lure and bear the imagination clear and pure. But even then, you can't be sure to heaven's whore to find the door. Now you know that it's up to you to board that boat sailing through the seas of days and lonesome years, on earth, on a ship with you as crew. All of us are alike, trapped in bodies with lasting aches, and the lonely souls we did not seek. Yet, all attempts to bridge the gaps between our paths, trips and ships, end up being surface deep. Regardless where our hearts we keep, or who our lives we allow to reap. Furthermore, our social ties are more the bore, the more widely we open the door to our own gratification and sense galore, whenever our egos we vainly adore. But now, you think I start to preach my moral code to you and teach a class in manners and social ethics for you to be a social peach. But I only hope that you will reach the end of a long and fruitless search. For whomsoever you will beseech, or whosoever you think is all too rich to grant you that eternal cosmic niche, and your frightened soul to firmly hitch from that dark and horrid earthly ditch. It's up to you, your mind to stretch and loosen free from your mindset latch, and from your soul's dependent safety crutch. You don't have to believe me if I proclaim I am not a thirsty blood-sucking leech, but I ask of you to hold your speech and listen to what I want to say, and then be off on your lonesome way. All the heartache that people take is traceable to that one mistake of imagining that what's at stake is different from what senses make, and believing in a fallible quack, which in reality is utterly fake. We cannot stop this process of imagination, not for a single instant, neither by an act of courageous will, nor by an intellectual resistance. Incessantly haunting us, the seven are never distant. Yes, they are the seven harlots who are responsible for imagination. They are our guides to that well-trodden road and thought pattern. They work to rejuvenate organized thoughts successfully proven, to portray survival as a tangible goal for a fragile organism, where, in reality, we are longevity itself and survival. But first, let me take a chance to try and clarify the distinction between virgin thought and imagination. All I can say about thought in my mind lurking, it is whatever the neurons are cloaking whenever they are arcing and sparking. That is what I can currently imagine. So, it is best to leave thought's essence alone, to avoid an argument circularly prone as a never-ending twisting cyclone. But I can say something about imagination, that illegitimate offspring of preconception. It is a portrait by the amateur brush of mental labor upon the precious canvas of pure sensory fiber, where the dye of luminous thought is caught, but dimly wrought and woefully marred. Let it from the start be agreed that of essence we shall not need to describe by tongue or by thoughts to seed the spores of confusion sprouting the wildest weeds that will engulf us all around in a nebulous spider's shroud, from whose midst we can't be freed. Rather, essence is that sweet honey feed we get in the end as our reward for abandoning the search itself for that sweet and pure honey feed. Essence is all around us found. The senses of it are all abound in the softest crackle of sound, or in the silky touch of a hand, in the streaming rays of golden dawn, or the soft sparkle in the eyes of fawn. It is the warm breath brushing my cheek from a lovely babe, helpless and meek. It is the soft whispers of thought, pure, unadulterated, sought in whatever is the name, what? In the virgin spirit of Puja Pat. The search begins with the awful witch, that tricky, sneaky, dastardly witch. Again, it's best to solemnly pledge the nature of which not to dredge from the abyss of imagination's stretch, but stand loftily on imagination's ridge by carrying the minimum of baggage to only follow the workings of which. But am I not harboring blasphemy itself by declaring to deities at work in halves, the half of what and the other of which? Yes, I am, if I insist on using words to analyze and explain, for there can be no avoiding these two in the relative plane. Then, has all my plight been lost in vain? You must know that the one named what confines not the God of power and might, the one to whose oneness there can be no access in any mind's recess or thought process, the one to whose singleness I can only pray to be a witness, the one in name, but all in all, the one whose name I know as soul. On to essence attacks that sharpened razor, that pointed arrow, that beam of laser, and the sensory input it will rephrase and a way for its archives to appraise, and many questions it will raise. How does the witch brew her magic potion for dissecting reality in fragmented portions? The witch herself is a mere illusion. It is your own mind's ill creation, resulting from ages of momentum along the direction of separation. It is what you suckled as an infant from the tit of ignorance, not the bosom of wisdom. The day you were taught you had a name, that with others you were not the same, and for your mistakes you were to blame, and aware of a self you became when you ran around or played a game. And you learned to quantify and classify the objects around you, and to clarify not as greed, but as a need to qualify for the sweet and tasty piece of pie. And why you did things that way that you did, you had to justify, finding reasons to verify. When you finally moped and lost all your hope, as you were bopped. Nope, you silly dope, you are not a dove. Of course you cannot fly. But before I sell you Peter Pan, there are other items to explain, and in your mind to entertain. Are you not confused yet? Isn't it imagination's feat, a Peter Pan to treat? Isn't it imagination that gives us hope and a stay of execution from reality's rope? And with a cold mechanical universe, it allows us to cope. When all the roads are looped and all opportunities loped, isn't it imagination that thrusts us forwards in scientific achievements and in glory onwards? And from the horrors of creation, manageably wards us. When bacterial demons and viral jinn are caught and clobbered. True indeed, true. But consider the next clue. Is it not imagination, your inner self to portray? As a neurotic freak in need for a shrink to fall prey, when the slightest disagreement in your ego's fabric appears by comparing what your eye peers to what your psyche fears. Is it not imagination that arranges your thought in structured sequences of organized freight, heaving age-old garbage upon your height, never unloading all that weight? Is it not imagination that lures you to dope in the guise and hype of a fruit most ripe? Or convinces you that from suffering you'll quickly escape if you give it all up and dangle freely at the end of a rope? Is it not imagination that masquerades to the rapist? What a thrill it must be, the teenager to rape. Nothing is new in what you've found. There are always two sides to a pound. What is so profound that me you hound? you nudge me to expound. Common to all civilizations and cultures on Terra. From the beginning of time to the modern era. Ever since the Babylonians' first code of law, or the Israelites' commandments and Torah, was to steer imagination's turbulent flow and bridle its wildness to reach a draw. The imagined good was always hailed, and evil thoughts summarily impaled. There can be no avoiding this tenet that is all too frail. If society is not to plunge into chaos and ultimately fail. But society is your mind's dull abstraction. It has no existence, let alone imagination. So, let us leave society all alone. I address whom is really prone to thoughts imagined cyclones inside the cosmic mind you own. Do you always have to pick and choose an imagined bloom to groom and boom, but to gloom and doom you close the room? Well, you must know right now you cannot have one without the other. Yours is not the moon. So, we are struck with the fabrications of our own imagination as being the only dependable source for information, but with a symmetry that is always broken into thoughts of attraction and those of aversion. These are seen in a myopic vision as being separate, and each to have a meaning by its own merit, and by opposing qualities they are split into ones to adore and others to abhor. But you've become aware of the devil's plan. The two together come hand in hand, and with each other to form a band, and on their own they cannot stand, and to each other to give its brand, under the spell of a witch's wand, in the relativistic thought plane. But if happiness and sorrow are of the same essence, why do we dread the sight of hell's presence, yet flock to enter heaven's pleasures? A valid question, you might imagine, but haven't you learned your lesson? There will be no suffering to be overridden if that very same why you abandon. But how could I not yell and cry in a fire, my soul to try and my skin to fry? Again you reply, obviously you have not learned your lesson. Identity of reality. From me, you have repeatedly heard, imagination is a two-edged sword. It could propel you forward, but it can cut your cord. If many idle questions you hide and hoard, even though this may not be fully agreed, it is not my wish that you heed in speed. Rather, steer slower your mental steed. The playground for imagination is sensory perception, where you've come to believe in observations and accept a reality without objection or a second thought's reflection. Do the senses confine the imagination? You are puzzled. All ideas or images in your mind settled are in a sensory format, grouped and huddled. From the senses, they had been originally wrestled, and as sights, sounds, smell, or touch are again peddled, whenever you call on information in your memory muddled. You can never imagine a color your eyes had not seen before, or savor the taste of a fruit not known to your palate, or from nothingness to create a sense. Even though haunted by ghostly abstractions, our imagination is still limited by sensory perception. Can't you see that you're locked in a prison with the name subjectivity to be christened? The witch indeed grooms who and whom, both being born from the witch's womb. Into subjects and objects they do dream to grow. When the witch's tit they wean. You are created by asking who owns the senses, after believing they are your body's defenses. At the demarcation line and as references between an inner self and outer fences, negotiating to prolong your existence in those dark yet torrid trenches. In the arms of whose you believe in having possessions, damsels in silk dresses, or Ali Baba's treasures, and that yours are vision's lenses, where whom in it dances. Sometimes war, but others allure, ties you, who, with tasks to pursue. But why does the self hide on the inside? And ways to reach it no one can provide, or locate the address where ego resides. To call on it lovingly, to celebrate its pride? It must be because the self is self-conscious, She knows that her talents are all bogus and that hers is not a true existence. She only lives in pretense of being precious. Undressed of her garbs of velvet, pearl, and fur, she stands naked for the eyes to stare at her and feel shame they fell in a moment's spur to an ugly hag who is the witch's stir. But her powers are strong, and to her you shall always belong, for as long as a sensory fallacy you prolong and train in a mind's camp called reason's ground. Logic loves adversity and thrives on multiplicity and pairs of opposites in quantity, molding them idols in shrines of sanctity, where it worships duality but blasphemes unity. It is geared mechanistically and is utterly devoid of humanity. Isn't that how information bits are processed in a computer's registry? It's very successful, however, and many wonders it can deliver when you stick to its rules of behavior and reassemble a puzzle previously severed. If you are motivated and if you are smart and clever. Logic is powered by objectivity, a complementary portrait of reality against subjectivity. It differs in quality, but it's another prison to trap the identity. Here, the whom is you, is not the deity, but an objective whom is ultimately almighty, together with the patron lord of causality. But we have already uncovered this lord's frailty, encountering the bizarreness of quantum reality. Die Hard postulates for quantum manageability, like non-locality, will attempt to exhume objectivity from the tomb of obscurity. But proponents must not have heard objectivity's obituary when ceremonially laid to rest among the relics in thought's crowding cemetery. But what is this thing called reality, whose existence we are talking about in liberty, without giving ample consideration, thought, or clarity? We are getting close to the bounds we set out at start, that with essence we shall not ignorantly flirt, but a word or two will make you alert to the guises others may exhort to raid your mind's fort. Each of us perceives reality from a different vantage point. Remember the ignorant blind men who handled the elephant, the leg a tree, the trunk a snake, the tail a rope, and tusk a stick. Will the sighted man's wisdom convince them it's all a mean trick? How ludicrous it is for philosophers to claim immunity from this statute, as they offer their mind miscarriages as golden paths to fulfillment, but with ringing terminology, verifiability, falsifiability, confusability. Does it not suffice to pitch objectivity versus subjectivity with a twist of relativity and causality to brew absurdity? The garbage of ages heaved upon your height, yet even more the philosophers want you to freight, albeit in tidy and shiny packages to wrap their weight. I, for one, cannot stand this sight. Well, why do you rhyme all this hymn, if not to trance us with their chime? You doubt the integrity of mine? Know then that I don't care too much, that you unnecessarily hold a grudge, when my intention is for you to budge from the ignorance where you lodge, and from the flying debris to dodge, when you pitch at me all that fudge. The self. I hear you crying in your bed at night. Alone, always alone, at that lonely sight, hurt, confused, frustrated, full of fright, pondering how to cope with reality's bite. It makes no difference if beside you lies Mr. Right. You imagine your life to be empty of substance, no motive or goal to be worth your patience, in a fake atmosphere devoid of essence. You mourn your unappreciated dazzle and brilliance, and your lofty spirit of humor and romance, regardless of all that confidence. Your achievements conveying your lively conscience are unnoticed by those to substance unconscious, who only care for glitter and finance. You despise rude people, uncultured in social finesse, greedy, lusty, ferocious creatures of menace, against whom you offer resistance. You dream of a soul to break through the bounds of your loneliness, to set you free from the sorrow of an imagined existence, and to merge together in God's holy presence. But what really hurts you, deep, innermost, your divine gift of a haunting appearance and your dozing scent of rosy fragrance, are merchandise in the marketplace. Isn't that the portrait painted on your inner canvas? You don't have to be brilliantly wise to surmise at Pujapat's boat that was a message in disguise, a ship at sea awaiting the guiding rays of sunrise. Each of us confines a heritage, our track record, our soul's appendage, an anchor cast as the breeze blows in advantage, lagging us trapped or turning in circles we can't manage. We cannot find a passage to a place to drop our excess baggage. Why don't we cut the rope to the anchor depriving us of hope, and with the winds and the waves elope, and forget the self, that ugly hag, whose skill is to whine and nag every moment of a long day if things go the wrong way. But even when she is gay, she doesn't stop to brag. She is difficult to gag. She doesn't go for crumbs. Hers are the juiciest rumps. The memory of her whims we have to chew and lump, every proud moment of it, and every snag and bump. She is a fallen tramp, but a seductive vamp, not easy to dump. The self is past history recorded as vast memory. You rhyme and gloat, but tell us how to cut her throat, you retort. Don't be alarmed, but by her charm, and in her arms, I am darned. Do you know what? By writing these strange words, I'm starting to learn more about myself. I guess that is the ultimate knowledge to seek. And if someone asks, but you have no self to know, my answer would be yes, but I want to know that is the case. Only then will all questions about my identity vanish at long last, I hope. But for now, I think myself to be an illusion, a self-perpetuating fallacy by memory's intrusions. Along with all its neuroses, phobias, vices, and delusions. Self is of a brand, like a pit of quicksand. Whenever I try to comprehend or struggle to unwind and understand, I sink deeper into sands I cannot command. I will never stand on solid land with her in my hand. Trained by the witch, who is a sorceress most powerful. She asks many questions and entrances me forgetful of not asking many questions, but wonderful, since to remember to be forgetful is with confusion plentiful, not just a mouthful. Can the eye see its own pupil? Can tongues define the burn of brine? Can thought track neurons arc and spark? Can perfume be exhumed from the nose's tomb? Before you're dragged into a mental struggle, or trigger your thoughts to wriggle and jiggle to the tunes of a fiddle, to solve the riddle, what makes you so fickle? You should know that morality dwells in the relative plane. Its complementary, whatever its name, is with it as twin. Morality is not a god on its own to worship in vain. Immorality is not the devil to curse and disdain. Rather, duality is the whore of the brain. The symmetry of the twins' virtues is broken, and only for practicality's sake is one chosen, as it creates an atmosphere to nurture a culture into a society for the self to promenade in vanity, But immorality will destroy the body before sanity. A catch 2 and 2. Feed the goon or leave the room. What if I don't play this game of name and fame, nor wallow in vices, in the blame of shame? You quizzically complain. You, who is the game of fame, and the flame and blame in guilt and shame. So where can you hide your blasphemous name? But into the abyss of oblivion we don't want to dive. For as long as we are alive, even if in the midst of a busy hive, which is a society for a self to thrive, there is hope that a lucky star high above will guide us to the mercy of a heart's true love, watched by the unflinching eyes of the mighty God of love. Emotion. How easy it is to play melodies upon the strings of emotion. That weak, vulnerable daughter of thought's creation, which makes us mellow to anything humane, reminders of our soul's lost domain. But in anger's rage and thunder, the earth under our feet shudders. More powerful than wisdom, emotion moves us. It is all in the name. A bulldozer is more robust. It's driven by its own momentum, the self to bus. Does emotion yield to memory at neural highways? A difficult question. It is not immediately obvious. To be sure, emotion is triggered by memory, but it soon takes off to its own territory, to be reactive to face an enemy, or responsive to family. That is why it's pursued relentlessly by the rational mind, to be imprisoned and enslaved on reason's ground, because its impetuosity it cannot understand, and fears repercussions to be profound, to weaken a hold on the soul inside, or set it free to a cosmos wide. But don't go out and exaggerate and fantasize your soul to liberate by foaming a mouth in anger and hate, because that way you'll sink your ship in the stormy winds of that raging sea. Don't be a barking hound in reason's pound, but set up your camp in middle ground. Greed gets you to milk the how, thinking emotion is a milky cow. Let me remind you, there is no how to heaven, and stop you from breaking your heart's haven. If you think against self, emotion is the weapon, the reason to tell. The witch of hell, against emotion, she cast a spell. When we are in the midst of a strong fray, we do not feel a distinction in any way between a hate fiery and a love merry. It is only when we sit back and reminisce of the good old days in the arms of bliss and the warmth of our partner we miss. Oh, remember that we almost went under as we boldly faced that sudden danger, but shaking and trembling in anger. That's when the spell is unleashed. The witch spreads the cream of emotion into pairs of opposing feeling sensations, happy or sad, love or hate, humble or vain, frown or grin, regardless whether adjective, verb, or noun come in twin. To the notion that emotion will win, don't give in. Yet, there is something there. But why bother at all? Thoughts are addressed to those who believe in a miracle at work in you. Life, dreams, laughter, and blues. Not accidents of cosmic brew. Carnal buildings, that is true. But above animals we grew. Not by bread alone we live, said someone who knew. He lived long ago, and long ago threw a lowly life away for a life anew. In soul's view, a story true. If you are happy in a fruitful life, better had you not read of my strife. But having read so far into the leaves gives the impression of a life to leave. Empty days and lonely years you weave, and in the end, a wasted life you'll grieve. But is there no hope? You closed all gaps and tied all ropes? Take heart. There is hope to kill her wrath along a road called faith. The dawn of a new age. It's time for me to preach and the virtues of faith to teach an attentive ear that wants to hear of the opportunity we have in reach to breach the umbilical cord to hashish, for our flooded bodies to dry out and our flooded lungs to fill up, and for ships to gladly search for golden rays of dawn, and at soul's sands to finally beach. What is faith to hold me in a trance, all too happy my heart could dance, seeking to avoid the witch's glance? Let's grow faith, our last chance. Faith is relief from grief. It means plans not to conceive, nor from memory to blindly retrieve factual data for a grand design to weave, which, upon magic's grave, lays a wreath to grieve. But in sensory aberrations do believe, if the heart an unfathomable miracle achieves, and allow the flame of faith to dwell in your hearth, to light your heart. You must trust your heart's intuition against all odds or anyone's objection, no matter what circumstance deem action to be fit according to a logical plan of reason. Yes, jump the fence at reason's bound and climb the slopes of spiritual mount. It's not a hike in the park. Expect heat and sparks, and a solid front to lurk in the forces of the dark. But a caution at you to brief the heavy deafness of a dead belief never replaces the true faith in God's relief. more than a word, is the faith you hold. But belief spells disaster for the Church of Gold. Enough you crack, you chicken cock. I'll bop your backs, your teeth to knock. You're out of luck, you withered duck. I swear to heck, your feathers I'll pluck. In a silken cloak, on a golden fork, I hope you choke until you croak. Fall on your face, your side or back, your bones to break, your skull to crack, and your blood to clot, to strike a stroke, and your veins to clog, and a heart attack. Rot in a box, I'll wear no black, in a church's crypt, and leave no track. Why am I angry, you ask? Sitting on your throne, on a golden rock, blocking the road of heaven's flock, you squeal and squeak like a queerly freak. And the filth you speak, of stench it reeks, deceiving people, of sheepish stock, that you hold the key to heaven's lock. Belief, I hear, loud and clear, a stick to tear the drum of ear. You've heard a brief. You should believe. Belief means grief for the olden chief who sits in Rome under a golden dome and a shroud for burial. He begins to weave. So why not turn a new leaf? And faith in the heart to keep replete. In a religion, warm without heat, the new religion of the sea. How could we, in this day and age, not stare an eye red in rage at a fake clown of a sage? And war on ignorance not to wage, or future bright to envisage. Freed from a lizard's cage, why not gauge the past strange and open a crisp new page at the dawn of a new age? Wrath vented. Let's cool down and forget about that funny clown. Composure regained. So let's explain. For as long as there are deceivers to haunt the meek and suck their blood on a vampire streak, feeding on their dreams and brains, of all their spirits to drain, but leave them sorrow and pain, by constructing images in their minds, giving descriptions to limit the divine, to cage entangled in the seven slime, only to benefit the greedy swine. For as long as that is true, a slump in stagnation is in view, and any single chance to renew a battered age into an age that's new will be held hostage by the witch's crew, and people will hew in sorrowful rue and cower in the witch's kitchen of sour soup. Yes, let's cut the links to the past. That is where belief is cast, and break the mold, keeping us on hold to be free at last. Submission to the will of our Creator. Faith in God is all it takes to face all sadness in calamity's wake. The chance is strong to hit a snag, but faith in God, all well will make. Isn't that what's really important? To be happy in a life of contentment? Forget all philosophical assessments and religious resentments and all idle arguments of cosmic elements, but seek fulfillment and contentment. Agreed, your mind is hungry for answers to the nature of reality, but will this deprive you a night's rest unless threatened is your sanity? If subjectivity knocks out objectivity's draw in the reality boxing match, won't you only feel your wager collector's punch? If at the autumn of your years the answers remain unclear, won't you only regret a wasted career? That last part does it. It touches where it hurts. Even if we are not covetous of possessions, we still would like to avoid poverty's repression. Even if we may not aspire for the highest degrees in education, we disdain the thought of living in ignorance and illiterate darkness. Even if we do not all have the trace of Pujapat's lucky genes, we are petrified by the thought of malignant regressive strains. Even if we do not persistently pursue fun and frolic, we loathe depression and a phobia neurotic. Even if not attracted to attractions, we always avert aversions. The fragile symmetry is always broken. We really want suffering pain to restrain. So, it is burn in emotion and pain in sensation that locks our souls in a selfish creation. Even though submission and concession deal a powerful blow to selfish sensation and are hated by your spirit for competition, thinking it to be the only way to redemption, along with faith, submission is the hammer that breaks the chains of slavery loose. But what a contradiction this is. Be yielding to be free? Exactly. Accepting your predicament and confinement will break it. You cannot do anything about it anyway. Remember, you cannot rebel against the witch, not with axes and torches, not with any power of mind or force of will, but by the intercession of God's essence. Not by the virtue of any human, dead or living, walking, eating, drinking. They are as much in the witch's grasp as you are. Tremendously more so if they want you to believe they possess the keys to the locks of heaven just to prolong her hold on their own souls, while at the same time attired in her fake gifts of gold and silk and worshiping her. But don't love the witch herself, because she is just a figment of your imagination. But love and worship the one who allows her to wheel and deal her illusions, making you believe she can cut his essence by raising the six, along with all those questions. But for what purpose he does this? Don't ask questions. Adore the one whose doors to his heaven he keeps wide open, as wide as a cosmos of infinite dimensions. All that is needed is for your heart to see them. He is not hiding from you. You are the one who is hiding behind yourself, with the 7 harlots encircling you, afraid to venture on your own. You have, for long, suckled from their tits the sour milk of ignorance and cowardice. Wean off their bitter brine and sip the nectar of God's mercy. Escape their suffocating grasp to the warmth of God's embrace. Wash off their stenchy sweat in crystal ponds of rosy scent. Plug your ears to shrilly squeaks and listen to a harp and a melody weeps. Pull off those pitch black veils to dazzle in the brilliance of soul. Here you rot in hell, but here in heaven in bliss you roll. Intercession by the Angels. Worship him who gathers clouds, shading earth from a searing sun. A night of thunder shouts aloud to stir up a storm, dizzily spun. Rain to pour, to wet the ground. A fertile land where rivers run, so faith can grow in our hearts and thorns to weed from our souls. Not by wit or will it's done, but by the angels of the Lord of Sun. This has been Religion of the Sea, a religion for the subconscious mind, written by Safwan Arekat, a child of the East, narrated by Hilary Hawkins. Copyright 1998, 2008, and 2021 by Safwan Arekat. Production copyright 2021 by Safwan Arekat.